What small decision you've made turned out to be the biggest? I was unemployed and had to buy a new pair of shoes. I went to the factory store outlet of a shoe company and got a pair. Then said to myself, wonder if they're hiring. They were. It's been 2 years and I'm an assistant manager in the corporate office. Best pair of shoes I ever bought. To the regional. I decided not to go back to work after the time was up when I took sick leave, as the job was the stress that was keeping me sick. Asked that my sick leave be in lieu of notice and bought a train ticket. Biggest decision as it meant I was free to go home at the weekend to see my dad and chill out. Found him having heart failure as I arrived. Ambulance arrived in minutes and saved him. 2-day trip turned into 3 weeks and I changed my whole life perspective. Holy crap, that hit me right in the chest. I decided to call a friend in another country to say hi. Ended up talking how miserable I was feeling at work. He went to his boss and offered a job shortly after. I'm moving to Germany next year. One morning in March 2013 I decided that I will skip the morning cigarette at work this particular day for no reason at all. Haven't smoked even once since that day. I went to a small engineering school in Pennsylvania and failed a class. I had to retake that class over the summer of my junior year to stay on track. I needed an internship, so I found the only technical internship I could find in rural Butte, PA at a manufacturing plant near me. They ended up offering me more money than anyone else after graduation, so I went there as basically a full-time intern. 3 months and they needed a maintenance supervisor, so bam, 20 direct reports. 9 months of undermining an incompetent boss later, he kicks me out of my position. Technical director of the company finds out and immediately hires me into a project manager role out of corporate, and now I'll live in LA and travel the country and sometimes the world for a kick-ass job. All casu, I failed a stupid calc class. So what you're saying is I should stop studying for my calc exam. I almost waited to take my wife to breakfast one morning in 2001. It was a Sunday and we needed to return a Blockbuster video, back when that was a thing, and I decided to let her sleep and take a motorcycle ride to return it and then come home and get her. I was hit, ended up on crutches. Fast forward to 9/11/2001 and I am in Boston on business. Boss finds out I am on the early flight home to Los Angeles. Flight 11 that hit the WTC. He changed my flight and told me to sleep in because I was hurt and on pain meds. Had I not gone on that ride and been in that accident, I would not be here. Strange. Your manager was with the terrorists but liked you so much he spared you. Broke up with a girl I was seeing and went to ladies' night at the Ramada with friends. I met the woman I've been married to for the last 30 years. There is ladies' nights in economy hotels. I never check my voicemail, ever. Takes too long and it's always the same call me blah blah blah, it's important. One night after seeing a show I noticed I got a phone call from a druggy friend whose crap I was getting real sick of, but for whatever reason I felt the need to listen to the message. It was a suicide note message. She was apologizing for everything and that she just did something bad and that she loved me and was telling me goodbye. Called the cops and they saved her, but just in time. She's now been over a year and a half sober and doing very well. Very proud of her. I talked to a girl in 2009. Not a romantic interest, but being friends with her had a tangible effect on my life. We ended up going to the same college for a while before I left and went to another school. It set off a series of chain events that ended up with me traveling to Europe, becoming friends with some amazing people, and basically rocking my understanding of the world. Not even my 3-year romantic relationship had as big of an effect on my life as that girl I decided to be friends with in 2009. Friends are good. Please fall in love with her. I was 24 and a young intern in the office. College asked me to a party on local campus. I figured I'd go. Same night a good friend's girlfriend, whom I'd met a few times, and her roommate were in town for a law lecture at a different local college. He suggested we meet up for dinner at a local spot. The intern party option had more appeal, and was my plan. After work at my apt getting set to head out, the phone rang and I knew it was friends GF calling to meet up as he said she would. I didn't answer it. A few minutes later another call. Didn't answer. A few minutes later another call. I was feeling a little guilty about the young intern party thing, knowing what I was hoping for there. So I decided to answer, and if it was In fact, my friend GF, I'd meet them. Otherwise I'd proceed to the party. The intern. It was my friend's girlfriend. I met them for dinner. I hit it off with her roommate. We three chatted long and ended up at another bar. They skipped the law lecture and we hung out all night. I called her that week and asked her for a date. Drove up to her law school a couple hours away. Went out. Talked on phone every night for the next week. I quit my job and moved to her town a month and a half later. We were engaged 4 months after that. We've been married now for 16 years and have a lovely 8-year-old daughter. A year after high school was over, I bumped into a friend I hadn't seen since graduating who asked me if I knew of any decent jobs. The store I worked at was hiring, so I recommended her and she got hired. Working together, we became very good friends. After a while, I decided to move out of state though. A couple years later I was still out of state. I was in a dead-end job in an industry I didn't belong in and wasn't making much money. I was completely lost and didn't know what I wanted to do. I had not really kept in touch with my friend, but I remembered it was her birthday, so I called to wish her a happy birthday. She had recently taken a job working with a mutual friend she had met at the last place we worked together. She told me there was an opening where I would be directly working with both of them. I hated the job I had at the time, so I applied for and got the job working with my friends in my home state. Since then, they have both quit and moved away, but we all still keep in touch now and I mostly love my job and now have a real career. A year ago I decided to try out this kendo workshop in my university. Today I'm in the midst of organizing the biggest kendo tournament in my country. You can do it if you believe in yourself. Looks like you did. Took the kids to Disneyland and saw Billy Hill and the Hillbillies. Reignited my love for playing the violin, which I hadn't done in 20 years. At the time, I was a physical therapist. Now I'm a full-time classroom music teacher. That was a moment and I knew it on the spot. I love Billy Hill and the Hillbillies. So sad that they're no longer playing at Disneyland. Missed the bus that would have taken me right home, so I caught a different one to go to the mall instead, and found out a store I liked was hiring. Worked there for years and dated one of my co-workers' friends. Made some new friends through the BF. He and I broke up, and one of my new friends ended up introducing me to my future husband. He and I have been together for 6 years now and have the most wonderful little boy, all because I missed the bus that one time. Whoa, I don't think I'd ever be able to retrace my steps in that way. Messaged a guy online to tell him he looked cute wearing mittens while he was rugged up warm in America. Been together 4 years, married for 2 of those years. Back in the day you could do profile searches on AOL for people in your area that were currently online. I decided to do a search and the first name on the list was a girl, so I decided to say, "Hey lady, what's up?" She responded and we went on a date a few weeks later. Just celebrated 17 years together from a random comment back in the early AOL days. Couldn't be happier. Small decision to send that message that changed everything in my life from that moment on. This is how my husband and I met. That was 17 years ago next month. Woke up one morning and decided I was done drinking. 2.5 years later I saved enough money for a new house, got my crap together, and got a job in my dream field. All because I had motivation after not wanting to get blasted every night. I had recently switched colleges and some people that I barely knew asked if I wanted to go to karaoke. It wasn't really my thing, but I agreed because I didn't have anything else going on. Fast forward to now, I've been happily married to someone I met that night for over 7 years. Read that twice as karate, although no lady can resist a skilled karate master. As a child I looked down at my penis and thought, I should play with you a little. We've been best friends for 30+ years. We play all the time. Beating your best friend mercilessly has never given one more pleasure. Take the smiley face acid. One small square of paper. Man. And it's not like we haven't been doing this twice a week for months. To heck with that next creative writing class. My major. The sequence of consequences. Panic attack. Ambulance. College dean calling me in the air to tell me not to come back. Dropping out. Enrolling in AmeriCorps. Being offered a 3-year fellowship at the Museum of Science. Going back to school, but this time with purpose. Graduating CM Lord. Getting the grad degree. 20 years later. I'm a lead teacher in the inner city and love it. 11 months ago I posted a pic on Reddit. Got to the front page. One redditor was butthurt and went through my post history and found out where I work. Sent a complaint. I was fired. Before you do searching, it was from a different account of mine. I deleted it. With a name like that I'm not sure whose side to take. Oh, cute. Playing World of Warcraft. I thought it looked like a really neat video game, so I caved and bought it 6 months after release. 3 years into it, I met the love of my life and now live 2,500 miles from my hometown. Are unexpected. Usually you'd say someone who buys WoW does the exact opposite thing. Giving a guy my phone number, not at a bar. Now we're engaged. He and I met in college, as part of the same Dungeons and Dragons group. He and his buddy were always trolling the crap out of the party, and I hated it. I'd even ask people to sit between us so I didn't have to be near the guy. We had one really good conversation once under odd circumstances, and I started to lighten up. What I didn't realize was he had a huge crush on me. At the time, I didn't get along well with my mother. My father always described it as being two polar north magnets, meaning that we're so alike we fight. It's changed completely now that I'm an adult with my own place and a career, but through college it was a nightmare. As summer approached, I became increasingly depressed because I felt that all I had to look forward to was a summer of intense fighting with my mother. The day I left for home for the year, he offered me his number. He said he was going to be on campus all summer, working the dorm front desk and taking classes. He didn't have anything to do, so he said he'd text me and maybe give me some needed social contact to get away from things with mom. I didn't see a reason why not, though I didn't think I'd really end up texting him all that often. I mean, I didn't hate him anymore, but we weren't close. Whatever. I gave him my number. It started a running conversation that literally lasted all summer. I'd text before bed, and when he worked the 12:06 AM desk shift, he'd send a good morning text to me, and we'd start talking when I got up. I really got to know him, and it was a side of him I'd never seen. I was surprised to find I really liked him. By the middle of July, we were dating, and the rest is history. Trolling in D&D is a tradition. I had dinner plans and had to shorten my usual after work walk. I turned right to go back towards home, so I could get ready for dinner. Instead of left my usual route away from home, and saw there was a house for sale that looked quite nice. I was living in a dumpy apartment at the time, and was in the process of changing landlords, which meant raised rent for me. I looked up the house on the internet, saw it was in my price range, and looked nice. Scheduled a visit with the realtor and bought. 3.5 years later, I'm typing to you from here and it's easily the best decision I've made and a really big one. Long story short, I shortened my walk because I was short on time, and found and bought my house. When I was 5 years old, a social worker pulled me out of class at break time and had me choose between living with my mother or my father. They were split up and were pretty much asking who had custody over me and my brother, but I thought it was just a choice of whose house we'd get to stay at and that we'd see both our parents every day. This was just over 12 years ago, and with all the different choices that spanned off of that one question, I can't imagine how different my life would be if I chose the other parent. You should watch the film Mr. Nobody. It has a good take on this thought. So I had a bit of a rough time in college. To catch up on credits, I took an online course called Intro to Computer Graphics on top of my other 5 courses. Class started great. I took my time and churned out some really nice photoshops, considering that I had never done any PS work before, all of which were well received by the professor. Then I let myself miss an assignment, then another. Then my free trial to Photoshop ran out, which prompted my cheap side to meet my lazy side for a match made in heck, and I just stopped keeping up with the class, fairly certain I just cost my an extra semester to graduate. Now to this day I cannot fully explain why I chose the following small decision that changed my life. Instead of dropping the class, I just stayed enrolled and took a chance to see what would happen instead of preserving my GPA with a drop instead of a nasty F. It was a mixture of being too embarrassed to see the professor to get the forms signed, too low of self-esteem to care about my GPA, and maybe just a bit of my risk-taking side thinking that somehow someway it might be best just to stay enrolled. Well, at the end of the semester I reluctantly checked my grades to try to plan out the rest of my time in college when I saw to this day one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Next to Intro to Computer Graphics read an A. Not only was it the credits that I needed, not only did I not waste money on the class, but it actually brought my GPA into the definitely high enough to graduate if I don't royally frick up the rest of my remaining classes on. How could this have happened? I should have had a 30% and I got an A. Not sure if the professor liked what I had actually turned in and gave me a break, although a C would have been fine in that case. Not sure if she confused me with someone else and some other kid got my super F. Not sure if her cat ran across the keyboard as she was submitting grades. Don't know. Don't care. I graduated by the skin of my teeth in 4 years and I have the seemingly self-destructive act of not dropping a class to thank for it. TLDR, I stopped participating in an online course, chose to stay enrolled instead of dropping the class, ended up with an A which enabled me to graduate in 4 years. Another option. There was a curve and everyone else fricked up worse than you. Probably unlikely, but hey, it all worked out in your favor. When I was 12 I told my dad that I wasn't feeling well enough to mow the lawn. He understood. The next day I found he died in his sleep. I've never stopped kicking myself for not just sucking it up and being able to spend a day with him. I can't imagine how you feel, but please try to believe you're not mowing the lawn did not cause your father's death. I am sorry for your loss. Oh crap, she just put me in her. Should I stop and go find my 3-year-old condom? What if I break the mood? I don't want to ruin my first chance at getting laid. Frick it, let's just go with flow. 6 weeks later after hanging up the phone, I should have gotten that condom. 11 years later I think it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Left corporate world to accept girlfriend's contract to work for her businesses. Major, total, complete, utter regret in every way, shape, and form ever since. I decided to answer the private message of a complete stranger and strike up a conversation. Half a year later I met my girlfriend through said stranger, who I'm together with for 5 years now. We recently moved together. Decided to go to an anime convention 3 years ago. I now have a girlfriend and the most supportive friend group possible. My confidence and self-esteem have skyrocketed for the first time in a long time. I'm not lying awake thinking of death every day. It's strange what silly people in costumes can do to you. Huh. Everybody needs friends. Good on you for finding yours. Was in high school and working at Burger King. I can accept that it's a crappy, not fun job, but the management was bad to the extent that they had to be trying to make it worse for everyone. There is no other explanation. I took a lunch break and went to the new movie theater that was being built up the road and applied there. Started working there when it opened. Met my wife and all my best friends while working there. All because my Burger King manager was an exceptional butthole that day. There was this BS class I had to talk in college that almost everyone skipped because it was a lecture. There was no tests and the only homework was an occasional essay based off the readings that would be turned in online. One day instead of skipping as I had made a habit of, I decided to go. There was a guest presenter talking about an allied field of my major. The lecture itself was not striking or special. In fact, I really didn't think about it at all afterwards. What she did seemed okay to me at the time, but not something I was excited about. Fast forward 1 year and I hate my major and I'm about to change my major when my advisor pushes me to shadow someone in the field. I don't know anyone in the field, but I have this woman's contact information. So I email her. I meet her at the firm where she works. She shows me past projects she's worked on and I realize that this field is exactly what I've always wanted to do. I just didn't realize it existed. Now I'm applying to grad schools with an emphasis on a field I didn't know existed with a degree I didn't think I wanted. And it was all because I decided to go to a boring class then email the presenter I didn't even find interesting just because I happened to have her email. I was sitting in school waiting for an event to start when I looked at my phone and noticed someone was calling me. I usually don't answer calls from numbers I don't recognize, but for some reason I picked it up. It turned out to be a company I applied for an internship with who previously passed on me. They wanted to set up a last-minute interview the next day. I went, they liked me, and I now have an internship lined up. It was my first day at a new job, was supposed to handle media relations. You know, hold press conferences. Anyway, as my very first dealing with the press, I have a brain fart and start reading a memo that my bosses handed me earlier. Finally, I compounded the mistake by answering, when I was asked when the memo was going into effect, that it would so immediately. Later I found out that my slip-up caused the collapse of my country and provided the final nail in the coffin for the Soviet Union. Good job, Gunter Schabowski, you broke East Germany. I raised my hand. My department manager asked if anyone was interested in working at the head office in Paris. 2-year contract. No one was remotely interested. I was in a stuck position with limited opportunity. I'm really nothing special. I have no special skills, but I don't fear failure. So I just raised my hand and playfully said, dibs. I've been living with my wife and baby girl in Paris now for nearly a year. I love it here. When Hurricane Isaac hit New Orleans, I decided to ride out the storm with my brother in our house instead of evacuating. We lived on the second floor, had a gas stove, had plenty of food and water, batteries and books, etc. We figured we'd be fine. And if it got really bad, if we found out we had to leave, my brother had a truck and we could get out even if the roads were crappy. We decided to invite 2 girls to stay with us, because they didn't want to evacuate to North Louisiana to stay with one of the girls' family who lived about 5 hours away. I ended up becoming good friends with one of the girls. The other was already sort of seeing my brother, and we ended up dating shortly after that. She's the love of my life, and that simple decision to not evacuate has brought me more happiness than I could have imagined. Plus, having the guts to offer her to sleep in my room instead of on the couch helped too. I behaved myself the first night and I really was just being nice, as my couch sucked and I had a big bed. We stayed up all night talking on the first night, telling jokes and stories, etc. I think the fact that I kept my hands to myself at first and waited for her to initiate a bit on the second night was the right move. TLDR. Didn't evacuate during hurricane. Got a girlfriend who will probably be my wife someday. Success. Some guy I didn't know but had in my friends list messaged me on Facebook last year. He was asking me to vote for his startup company so they could get more funding. I normally never pay attention to people asking me to sign up for random sites, but decided to go for it this time. I replied, I'll do it, but gimme a sec. Just got a new mechanical keyboard so I'm a bit slow with the typing. It sparked a debate about games in general, and we instantly became friends. We got together shortly after, and then he got me into Dota. Still hate him for that one. Dota is so fun. I signed up for an improv class on a whim a year and a half ago, to take for fun. Now I do stand-up comedy and am obsessed with comedy, as a whole, all from clicking that button. XGF, who was also staying at a mutual friend's place for my birthday, texted me saying goodnight, so I decided to amicable and go in to see if she wanted a hot drink making since I decided to make one for myself. She'd taken 46 painkillers and was texting me to say goodbye. I saved her life. Giving the lifeguard some pudding. It was the start of last May and a new lifeguard started to work for us. I didn't really care much. I wouldn't have spoken to her any more than I had to, but an older lady handed me some pudding and told me to go share it with the lifeguard. After I gave her some pudding we talked and I found out she didn't have the supplies she needed to clean around the pool house. I decided to get her some after work. After I brought her supplies I decided what the heck, I should just see if she wants a lift home too. After that we were always together, and visited each other at our workstations whenever we could. Planned our days off so we could spend them together. It's been about 6 months now. So about a year ago my parents got divorced. At the time I was having a lot of medical problems so I missed a lot of school, and on top of that I was lazy so I ended up failing with no chance of recovery. It was about a month from the end of the school year. At that point I knew I didn't have any chance and I had been told my parents were getting divorced so I just stopped going. Anyway, my parents weren't too happy about all of that since legally you're supposed to go to school. So my dad told me that if I skipped school one more time he would send me on the next plane to Canada. Now I was living in California at the time, but my mom is originally from Ontario and her family lives there. I didn't really believe my dad since in the past he would sometimes make idle threats and stuff to get me to do things. Anyway, I skipped school that day, and that night my mom started calling my Canadian aunts and uncles about taking me and picking me up from the airport. I thought my dad was still joking at this point when he asks me, "Do you want to go to Canada? We can send you first thing tomorrow morning." I, being me, just said, "Yeah, sure, dad." So I ended up going to sleep. I woke up and my dad told me, "Pack your bags, your plane's in 3 hours." I am not the type to back down in the slightest. My parents would constantly tell me I'm as stubborn as a mule. So I went, didn't even say goodbye to my siblings. I missed my plane connecting flight in Houston, so I ended up staying there overnight and catching like a 6 AM flight. They changed the gate on me. I lived here for about 2-3 months with my grandparents before my mom and sister came here as well. Since my parents were getting divorced, my mom decided to live closer to her family. Things are much better now. Before I was in butthole with a lot of health problems, failing school with 0 friends. Now I'm in butthole with few health problems and I'm getting high B's in school with a few close friends. So all in all, life's pretty good, just because I said yeah sure. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.